You're young, adventurous, standing atop a lush mountain trail in paradise. Birds sing, sunlight filters through emerald leaves. It's the dream trip you've always wanted. Now imagine that dream twisting into a nightmare so dark, so inexplicable, that even a decade later, the world still shivers at its name. This isn't fiction. This is the story of Kris and Lisanne, two vibrant girls swallowed by Panama's jungle, leaving behind clues so haunting, they defy all logic. What really happened out there? And why does this mystery cling to us like jungle fog? To understand the weight of this mystery, we need to truly know the young women at its heart. Kris and Lisanne weren't just names on a missing persons poster, or faces in a tragic news story. They were vibrant, real people, full of life and plans and ordinary dreams. They were best friends, inseparable, both from the Netherlands, both in their early 20s. Kris was 21, Lisanne was 22. Picture them, bright-eyed, full of that youthful energy and optimism that makes you believe anything is possible. They weren't just looking for a quick holiday thrill. They were compassionate, driven by a desire to experience the world and make a small difference. Kris, she was the outgoing one, the extrovert. She had a spark, a warmth that drew people in. She was creative, an artist at heart, someone who saw beauty and wanted to capture it or share it. Life wasn't just something that happened to Kris. She seemed to actively reach out and grab it. She'd recently finished her studies and was at a crossroads, figuring out her next steps. This trip, it was part of that journey of discovery. Lisanne, a little quieter, perhaps more thoughtful. The student, she was studying applied sciences. Focused and intelligent, Lisanne was the kind who planned, who thought things through. She loved sports, was active and fit. While Kris might paint the picture, Lisanne might be the one figuring out how to frame it. She was looking forward to this adventure too, but maybe approached it with that slightly more measured, analytical perspective that students often have. Together, they balanced each other perfectly. And this trip, it wasn't a whim. It wasn't just about lying on a beach. They dreamed about it, planned it meticulously for months. 6 whole weeks in Panama, but not just as tourists. Their main purpose was volunteering. They were going to spend their time helping local children in a small, beautiful town called Boquete. Imagine Boquete for a moment. Nestled high in Panama's mountains, known for its cool, spring-like climate, a world away from tropical beaches. It's surrounded by lush, green cloud forests, mist clinging to the trees, and endless coffee farms painting the hillsides. It felt safe, welcoming, a place known for its stunning natural beauty and friendly community. The perfect spot for 2 young women wanting to immerse themselves, to help, and to explore responsibly. Think about the excitement they must have felt arriving there, stepping off the plane, feeling that different air, seeing those incredible mountains for the first time. They settled in with a host family, a normal, everyday experience for volunteers, meant to give them a real connection to the place. They chatted with their hosts, probably shared meals, learned a little about local life, and like any young person on an adventure of a lifetime, they documented it, smiling selfies, of course, capturing the newness, the beauty of Boquete, the fun they were having together. Those photos show 2 friends utterly alive, soaking in the experience. Kris with her bright smile, Lisanne maybe with a slightly more reserved grin, but the happiness clear in both their eyes. Beyond the volunteering, they were also eager explorers. They mapped out hikes. They researched trails around Boquete, known for its stunning scenery. They wanted to see the waterfalls, the forests, the panoramic views. It was part of the package, contributing to the community and also experiencing the incredible natural wonder Panama offered. They were being sensible, planning their adventures during the day, sticking to known paths. April 1st, 2014, a Tuesday morning. Spring in Panama, the air likely crisp and clear in the highlands. After days of volunteering and settling in, they decided on a hike. They chose the El Pianista Trail. It was popular, well known among backpackers and tourists visiting Boquete. It wasn't some obscure, off-the-beaten-path jungle trek. It was a trail people did regularly. The path starts easily enough near the town, winding its way up into the surrounding hills towards a viewpoint called the Mirador. Picture them that morning, pulling on comfortable hiking clothes, packing a day pack, water bottles, maybe some snacks, their phones, Kris's camera, essential tools for any modern explorer. Excitement buzzing between them. A day out in nature, just the 2 friends, breathing in the mountain air, getting some exercise, taking in the views. A completely normal, even wholesome, plan for two fit, adventurous young women in a place they were starting to know. They told their host family where they were going, the El Pianista Trail. They set an expectation, a simple, reassuring promise. We'll be home by dusk, back in time for dinner, back before dark, a reasonable time frame for a day hike on a known trail. And then they set off, two friends, Kris and Lisanne, walking out into the beautiful Panamanian morning, full of life, full of the simple joy of being young and free in a stunning part of the world, on an adventure they had carefully planned and so eagerly anticipated, heading towards the trailhead, chatting, laughing, maybe taking a few more pictures as they went, the beginning of what should have been just another wonderful day in their 6-week adventure. They walked away from the safety of the town, towards the green embrace of the trail, unaware, of course, that this ordinary morning hike would become the last known chapter of their lives as they knew them, that the promise of being home by dusk was one they would tragically, inexplicably, never be able to keep. That bright, hopeful departure is where the known story of Kris and Lisanne, the vibrant young women with dreams and plans, truly ends, and where the deep, unsettling mystery begins. That Tuesday morning, April 1st, 2014, began like any other in Boquete. There was nothing unusual in the air, no sense of foreboding, for Kris Kremers and Lisanne Frun. It was simply the start of a planned day hike, an adventure they'd been looking forward to. It was meant to be straightforward, enjoyable, safe. We know they were seen in town that morning. Witnesses later recalled them, two young foreign women, laughing together, probably enjoying the cool mountain air and the novelty of being in such a beautiful place. They stopped to buy snacks, simple things, probably fruit or energy bars, maybe some water, normal preparations for a few hours walking in the hills. They looked happy. They looked excited. They looked exactly like what they were, two friends setting off on a pleasant day out. They carried Kris's digital camera. This camera would later become a crucial, haunting record of their journey. The photos it captured that morning are completely ordinary, yet now unbearably poignant, sun-drenched images. Bright, clear daylight filtering through the trees, lush green plants lining the path. Kris, true to her playful spirit, striking little poses for the camera, a smile here, a playful glance there. Lisanne appears more contemplative in the photos, often gazing out at the misty valleys unfolding below them, taking in the vastness of the landscape. The pictures show two young women relaxed, enjoying the scenery, the exercise, and each other's company. There's no hint of concern, no sign of anything being wrong, just two friends on a hike. The trail they chose, the El Pianista, starts relatively gently near Boquete. It winds upwards, steadily gaining elevation as it heads into the surrounding hills towards a viewpoint known as the Mirador. The path isn't paved. It's a dirt track, sometimes rocky, sometimes muddy, weaving through farmland and then into denser forest. It's known to be challenging in parts, steep and slippery, especially after rain. But it was a clear day. They were fit young women. They were prepared. They were sticking to the plan. Step by step, they climbed higher. The air might have grown a little cooler. The sounds of the town faded away, replaced by the sounds of the forest, birds, insects, the wind in the leaves, their own footsteps on the path. They took photos along the way, documenting their progress, capturing the views opening up behind them. The camera's timestamp tells us the story of their ascent. By around 1 p.m., they reached their goal, the summit, the Mirador. This is the highest point on the El Pianista Trail, a rocky outcrop offering sweeping, panoramic views over the valley below and the jungle stretching out towards the horizon. It's a natural spot to stop, rest, catch your breath, and admire the achievement of the climb. They'd made it. We know they stopped here because the camera captured one final photo. It's a daytime image, taken in the bright afternoon sun. Kris is sitting on a large rock, looking out at the incredible view. Lisanne is standing beside her, also facing the vast landscape. They are both radiant, alive. You can see the accomplishment in their posture, the simple joy of reaching the top after their climb. Kris is smiling. Lisanne looks peaceful, absorbed in the scenery. This photo, number 509 on the camera, is the last clear, daytime image we have of Kris Kremers and Lisanne Frun alive. It shows them exactly where they intended to be, having completed the main part of their planned hike. They were at the summit. They had succeeded, And then silence. Absolute. Profound silence. After that photo at the Mirador, taken around 1 p.m. on April 1st, there is no further record of communication from either Kris or Lisanne. No texts sent, no calls made, no messages posted online. Their phones, which had signal in parts of the trail lower down, fell silent. The camera stopped taking pictures. It was as if a switch had been flipped. The vibrant connection they had with the world, captured just moments before in that sunny summit photo, was abruptly severed. Back in Bouquet, time passed. Dusk began to settle over the town. Their host family expected them back for dinner, remembering their promise to return before dark. But they didn't appear. As the evening wore on, concern might have flickered, but it was easily dismissed at first. It's a natural reaction. They probably lost track of time. The host likely thought, they're young, enjoying themselves. Maybe they met some other hikers. Maybe they stopped for a drink. It's easy to imagine rationalizing it away. Hikers can be late. Phones can lose signal. They'd probably walk in any minute, full of stories about the views. But they didn't walk in. Dinner time came and went. The night grew darker. Still, no sign of them. The rational explanations started to feel thinner. Worry began to gnaw, but perhaps hope still lingered. Maybe they'd decided to stay somewhere else, though it seemed unlikely. Their belongings, their beds were waiting at the host family's home. Sleep, for anyone waiting for them, must have been fitful that night. Morning arrived on April 2nd. Bright, clear daylight returned to Bouquet, but Kris and Lisanne did not. Their beds were untouched, exactly as they'd left them the morning before. Their backpacks, their things, were still there. They hadn't come back at all. This is the moment when simple worry crystallized into cold, hard panic, the realization that something was very, very wrong. They hadn't just been delayed. They hadn't lost track of time. They were missing, vanished. They had walked up a popular hiking trail on a sunny Tuesday afternoon, reached the summit, taken a photo proving they were there, and then simply disappeared. The Alpinista Trail, the path they confidently walked up just 24 hours earlier, now seemed like a different place. The sunny photos felt like artifacts from another time. The jungle, so inviting and beautiful in the daylight images, suddenly loomed large, dark, and impenetrable. It had opened its arms to two young adventurers and then, without warning, without a sound, it had closed its doors behind them. The trail had ended, not just geographically at the Mirador, but for Kris and Lisanne. It ended in a terrifying, unexplained void. The search for answers, and for the girls themselves, was about to begin. The morning of April 2nd, 2014, dawned bright in Bouquet, but it brought no relief, only rising panic. Kris and Lisanne were missing. They hadn't come back. Their untouched beds and belongings were a silent scream. The beautiful Panamanian morning felt suddenly heavy, charged with dread. Action couldn't wait. The search began immediately. First, it was local. People who knew the area, the host family, neighbors, local guides familiar with the Alpinista Trail, fanned out. They retraced the path Kris and Lisanne were known to have taken. They called their names, the sound echoing through the trees near the trailhead. Kris, Lisanne, hoping for a shout back, a wave, any sign. But the jungle absorbed their calls, giving nothing back. Silence. No sign of the girls on the path itself. No sign at the Mirador viewpoint where they'd last been photographed. As hours passed without any trace, the effort escalated dramatically. This was no longer just a local concern. Panamanian authorities mobilized. Search and rescue teams arrived. The jungle around Bouquet, so recently a place of beauty and adventure, transformed into a vast, impenetrable search zone, a green hell. The sound of hope became the heavy, rhythmic thud-thud-thud of helicopter blades. Helicopters lifted off, flying low over the dense canopy, scanning for any break in the green, any flash of color, any movement. Pilots and spotters peered down, searching for anything, a piece of clothing caught on a branch, a figure waving, any anomaly in the endless sea of trees. But the jungle roof was thick, a solid green barrier. Seeing anything beneath, it was like trying to see through a wall. On the ground, it was even harder. Search teams plunged into the dense undergrowth, hacking paths through vines and ferns. The terrain was brutal, steep, slippery slopes, hidden ravines choked with vegetation, sudden drop-offs obscured by foliage. Every step was a fight against nature. Mud sucked at boots. Thorns tore at skin and clothes. The air was thick, humid, and alive with insects. It was slow, exhausting, dangerous work. They brought in search dogs, specially trained animals hoping to pick up the girls' scent. Handlers led them through ravines, along creek beds, over rocky outcrops. The dogs scrambled, noses down, working tirelessly. But the jungle is vast, and scents dissipate quickly, washed away by rain or carried off by wind. The dogs worked hard, but found no trail to follow. No clear path led them to Kris and Lisanne. Locals joined the effort in force. People who knew these mountains intimately walked paths less traveled, ventured into areas tourists never saw. They shouted the girls' names into valleys, near waterfalls, down into deep gorges. Kris, Lisanne. Their voices bounced off rock faces, swallowed by the dense foliage and the constant background hum of the jungle. They listened intently for any answering cry, any sound of distress, but only the jungle answered, with birdsong. Insect chirps, the rush of water, the wind in the trees. No human voice called back. Days passed. April 2nd became the 3rd, then the 4th. The initial frantic energy began to wane under the weight of failure. The sheer scale of the terrain was overwhelming. They found nothing, absolutely nothing. Not a single footprint definitively belonging to the girls after the summit photo. Not a dropped water bottle. Not a scrap of torn clothing. Not a lost hair tie. Not a candy wrapper. It was as if Kris and Lisanne had simply vanished into thin air the moment they stepped beyond the Mirador viewpoint. The jungle guarded its secrets fiercely. Then, amidst the crushing lack of physical evidence, a digital clue emerged. Investigators obtained the phone records for Kris and Lisanne's mobile phones. And what they found was both heartbreaking and deeply unsettling. The records showed desperate attempts to call for help, starting on the very afternoon they disappeared, April 1st, and continuing for days. 94 attempts, 94 times. One of the girls, or perhaps both, sharing a phone, tried to dial the emergency number, 112 or 911. 94 times they must have held the phone aloft, turning slowly, searching frantically for even a single bar of signal, hoping against hope for a connection. But signal in that remote, mountainous jungle area was a ghost. Elusive, unreliable, especially beyond the Mirador, deeper into the wilderness towards the Continental Divide. Each of those 94 attempts ended the same way. The call died before it could even properly connect. Mid-ring, a failed connection. No voice on the other end heard their pleas. No operator received their distress call. The jungle wasn't just physically vast. It was a communications black hole. The pattern continued. Calls were made throughout the day, and even into the night on April 1st. April 2nd. April 3rd. The attempts showed they were alive, at least for those first few days. Alive, aware of their danger, and desperately trying to reach the outside world. The last successful phone activity was a brief check of the phone's hour on Lisanne's phone on April 3rd. Then, the last attempt, one final, failed emergency call on April 5th at around 1:50 p.m. After that, nothing. Silence. Only static in the records. The phones went dead, or were no longer used. This information changed the atmosphere of the search. Knowing they had been alive, trying to call for days, was agonizing. It meant they were out there, lost, hurt, or trapped, for at least 4 days after they vanished. Hope, already fragile, began to curdle into something darker, a deep, gnawing dread. If they were alive but couldn't be found in this vastness, and their calls couldn't get through, what chance did they have? The news reached the Netherlands. The families of Kris and Lisanne were shattered. They immediately boarded planes, flying across the ocean to Panama, clinging to the fading hope they could help, that their presence might make a difference. Their arrival added a layer of raw, human anguish to the already tense search efforts. Dutch investigators also flew in, bringing expertise and resources. They joined the Panamanian teams, poring over maps, studying satellite imagery, analyzing the phone data to try and pinpoint possible locations the calls were made from. They coordinated search grids, trying to cover every possible inch of treacherous ground. They interviewed locals again, explored alternative theories. But Panama's jungle is ancient, complex, and indifferent. It doesn't give up its secrets easily. It had swallowed Kris and Lisanne whole. Despite the helicopters, the dogs, the shouting voices, the expert analysis, and the desperate love of their families, the green hell remained silent. It held on to the girls, and the mystery of what happened after that final summit photo. with a terrifying, impenetrable grip. The voices calling out were met only by the vast, echoing silence of the wilderness. For 10 long weeks after Kris and Lisanne vanished, the jungle kept its secret. The massive search efforts, the helicopters, the dogs, the desperate calls of searchers, none of it had worked. Hope, once a flickering flame, had dwindled to cold, gray ash. The families had returned to the Netherlands, carrying an unbearable weight of grief and unanswered questions. Life in Bouquet had slowly tried to return to normal, though the shadow of the missing girls lingered. It felt like the vast, green wilderness had swallowed them whole, leaving no trace behind. Then, on June 11th, 2014, everything changed. It wasn't a search team or a high-tech operation that made the discovery. It was an ordinary day for an Ngobe woman from the Alto Romero community. She was doing a routine chore, washing clothes in the Culebra River, a winding waterway located miles away from the El Pianista Trail, downstream in a completely different drainage area. As she worked, something caught her eye in the silt along the riverbank. She bent down for a closer look. There, half buried in the mud and stones, was a backpack, a blue backpack. It wasn't torn to shreds. It wasn't smashed open. It looked surprisingly intact. She carefully pulled it free from the river's edge. It was heavy, waterlogged, but clearly hadn't been swept violently down raging rapids for weeks. This discovery alone was startling. Why was a backpack here, miles from where the girls disappeared? And why did it look almost placed, rather than randomly dumped by floodwaters? She did the right thing. She alerted the authorities. The backpack was quickly secured and examined. Inside, investigators found items that sent a chilling wave of certainty through everyone involved. This wasn't just any backpack. It belonged to Lisanne Frun. The contents were meticulously cataloged, and each item told a confusing, haunting story. Lisanne Frun's passport, clear identification, damp but readable. Kris Kremers' digital camera, the same camera that had captured their sunny hike and the terrifying night photos. Now silent. 2 mobile phones, Kris's Samsung Galaxy S3 and Lisanne's iPhone 4. The very phones that had recorded those 94 desperate emergency calls. A water bottle, 2 bras, a pair of sunglasses, Lisanne's student card from the University of Applied Sciences in Amersfoort. And perhaps the most baffling item of all, $83 in US cash. The money wasn't waterlogged pulp. It wasn't scattered loose. It was dry, and it was neatly folded. How is this possible? How could paper money survive 10 weeks in a jungle river environment, supposedly tossed and tumbled by currents, and emerge completely dry and carefully folded? This detail alone sent shivers down spines. It defied the expected logic of nature. Rivers in this region, especially during the rainy season when the girls disappeared, are powerful, destructive forces. They sweep away trees, carve new paths, churn up mud, and smash anything caught in their flow. A backpack should have been ripped apart, its contents scattered, pulverized, or hopelessly waterlogged. Yet here it was, found relatively intact, with dry, folded cash inside. It felt deliberate. It felt staged, or at the very least, incredibly, unnaturally preserved. The discovery of the backpack was a grim confirmation of everyone's worst fears. Kris and Lisanne were almost certainly dead, but it also deepened the mystery exponentially. How did the backpack travel so far? Why was it in such relatively good condition? And who, or what, folded that dry cash? The backpack was a signal, a terrible message from the jungle. And it was only the beginning. In the weeks that followed the backpack's discovery, the river and the jungle along its banks began to yield more gruesome evidence. Search teams and local villagers scoured the area downstream from where the backpack was found. The terrain was dense, steep, and treacherous, a world away from the relatively accessible El Pianista Trail. Then, discoveries started happening. A hiking boot, found near the riverbank. Inside it was a human foot, severely decomposed. The boot matched the type Kris was known to wear. A pelvis bone, found wedged between some rocks further along the river. A piece of denim shorts, later confirmed by forensic testing to contain traces of Kris Kremers' DNA. More bones. Fragments surfaced scattered along a stretch of the river spanning several kilometers. A shin bone here, a rib there. It wasn't a body. It wasn't even 2 bodies found together. It was a horrifying jigsaw puzzle of human remains, spread out over a large distance. Some pieces were found near the riverbank, Others were discovered deeper in the jungle foliage, away from the immediate water's edge. Forensic scientists went to work. DNA testing was performed on the recovered bones. The results were conclusive, yet offered no comfort. The remains belonged to Kris and Lisanne. The jungle had finally given something back. But it wasn't the girls. It was fragments, pieces of a terrible puzzle. The way the remains were found only added to the chilling nature of the discovery. They weren't found close together, suggesting the girls died near each other. Instead, Kris's remains, identified by the pelvic bone and the DNA on the short's fragment, were found in one location. Lisanne's remains, including the foot and the boot, were found scattered further downstream, miles away from Kris's location. It was as if the jungle hadn't just killed them, but had then scattered their remains far and wide, spitting them out piece by piece, over weeks, across a brutal landscape. The discovery of the backpack and the bones provided tragic confirmation of death, but it provided almost no answers about how they died, or why they ended up where they did. The dry, folded cache in the backpack became a symbol of the case's profound strangeness. The scattered bones spoke of the jungle's brutal power and indifference. From the hopeful summit photo on April 1st to the scattered remains found months later, the journey of Kris and Lisanne had ended in a way no one could have imagined, leaving behind only fragments, a backpack of mysteries, and a silence more profound than ever. The discovery of Kris's camera inside Lisanne's backpack wasn't just about confirming their fate. It became the centerpiece of a terrifying, unsolved riddle. This small digital device, meant to capture happy memories, instead held a sequence of images so bizarre and unsettling. They transformed a tragic disappearance into a digital ghost story. When investigators examined the camera, the first photos were exactly what you'd expect. Sunshine, lush green trails, Kris smiling, posing playfully against the breathtaking backdrop of the Panamanian highlands. Lisanne looking out thoughtfully over misty valleys. Pictures of the path, the plants, the view from the Mirador summit. These were the images of April 1st, 2014, the last normal hours. They told the story of a beautiful, uneventful hike, frozen in time just before 1 p.m. Then, the timeline jumps, abruptly, horrifyingly. The next photos weren't taken that afternoon, or even the next day. The camera remained silent and unused for over a week. Then, suddenly, it sprang back to life in the dead of night. Not just 1 or 2 pictures, 90 photos, 90 flashes in the dark, all taken within a terrifying 3-hour window, between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. on April 8th. A full week after they vanished. Imagine the scene: pitch blackness, the oppressive, total darkness of the jungle at night. No moon, no stars visible through the thick canopy, just suffocating black. And in that void, the camera's flash begins to fire, over and over and over again. What did it capture? Not faces, not clear scenes. The vast majority of these night photos show nothing recognizable at first glance, just disorienting blurs of light and shadow. Blurry, out-of-focus glimpses of leaves and branches hanging close to the lens, illuminated for a split second by the harsh flash before plunging back into darkness. Rocks, more leaves, the texture of tree bark. The images are chaotic, jarring. They look like accidental snaps, taken by a trembling hand, pointing the camera randomly into the impenetrable night. But then, patterns emerge. Strange, unsettling details. Several photos seem to focus on specific spots. A piece of crumpled plastic or paper, maybe a candy wrapper, lying on a rock, a distinctively shaped branch, a small, reflective object, possibly the back of Kris's phone, placed carefully on a stone, and perhaps the most deliberate-looking image, a red plastic shopping bag, tied conspicuously to the end of a thin branch, standing upright, like a marker or a signal. These items appear repeatedly, from slightly different angles, as if someone was methodically documenting them. Why? Was it an attempt to create landmarks in the featureless dark? A desperate effort to leave a trace? Or was it something else? Then, piercing through the confusion of leaves and rocks, 2 photos stand out with chilling clarity. They are fleeting glimpses of the girls themselves, confirming they were alive, or at least present, during this terrifying nocturnal photography session. Photo 510, a flash illuminates the back of a head. Long, dark, matted hair, stuck to the skin. It's unmistakably the back of Kris Kremers' head. She isn't facing the camera. She's lying down, or perhaps slumped forward. Her hair looks wet, dirty, plastered against her scalp and neck. There's no sign of movement, no indication she's aware of the photo being taken. Photo 580, a close-up blur. It's a finger, a human finger, partially covering the lens. The focus is poor, but the image is clear enough to show the finger isn't cut or injured in an obvious way. Later analysis suggested it likely belonged to Lisanne. It's the most direct human interaction with the camera in all the night photos. These two images are like lightning flashes revealing figures in a storm. They prove Kris and Lisanne were there, in that dark place, a full week after they disappeared, but they raise far more questions than they answer. Why was Kris seemingly prone? Her hair matted. Why was Lisanne's finger touching the lens? Was it accidental? Was she trying to turn the camera off? Or was she holding it, taking the picture herself? Why take 90 photos, mostly of seemingly random jungle debris? The possibilities are chilling and confusing. A signal? Were they trying to use the flash as a beacon, hoping searchers or aircraft might see the repeated bursts of light piercing the canopy, pointing it at reflective objects or the bag to make it more visible? Navigation? Were they lost in utter blackness, using the brief illumination of the flash to try and see their immediate surroundings, to find a path or avoid a hazard like a cliff edge, taking pictures of landmarks to try and orient themselves? An accident? Was the camera being triggered accidentally as they stumbled, fell, or tried to use it blindly in panic? Could the photos of Kris's head and Lisanne's finger be the result of a fall or struggle in the dark? Something else? The sheer number of photos. The focus on specific mundane objects. The time of night. It feels deliberate, yet pointless for survival. Was fear driving irrational behavior? Or was there a more sinister presence? Someone or something else forcing this bizarre documentation? The phones add another layer of profound mystery. We know about the 94 failed emergency calls ending on April 5th, but the phone records held another strange clue. On April 6th, at around 10:50 a.m., a full day after the last known emergency call attempt, someone successfully entered the PIN code to unlock Lisanne's iPhone. Think about that. April 6th, days after the girls were last heard from, days before the Eerie night photos. Someone accessed that phone. Who? Was Lisanne still alive? Was she, despite injury or exhaustion, somehow managing to turn the phone on, enter her PIN correctly, perhaps trying one last time to get a signal or check the time, even though she didn't attempt another call? Was she trapped or hiding? Did she conserve the phone's battery for days, finally deciding to check it on the morning of the 6th? Or was it someone else? Someone who had found the phone, perhaps with Lisanne, or perhaps without her. Someone who knew her PIN, or guessed it, this single PIN entry, isolated days after communication stopped, injects a deeply unsettling question mark into the timeline. The camera's 90 flashes in the dark and that one phone PIN entry days after the calls stopped are the core of the Kremers and Frun mystery. They are digital breadcrumbs leading not to answers, but into a deeper, darker thicket of questions. They prove the girls survived for days in the jungle. They show moments of terrifying, confusing action in the dead of night. But they whisper. They don't explain. Were these the actions of two lost, desperate friends fighting to survive against impossible odds? Or do they point to something else entirely? Something far more disturbing hidden within the green hell? The images flicker in the dark, silent, haunting, and utterly enigmatic. The discovery of the remains and the baffling contents of the backpack confirmed the worst. Kris Kremers and Lisanne were dead. But how did they die? What happened to them between that sunny summit photo on April 1st and the scattering of their bones along a distant river weeks later? The evidence we have, the phone calls, the night photos, the backpack, the bones, is like a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing. It doesn't form a clear picture. Instead, it has fractured into two main, competing theories. Neither offers complete comfort. Neither solves the mystery entirely. Theory 1, a tragic accident, lost, injured, and succumbing to the wildness is the official explanation, supported by Panamanian authorities and many investigators. It paints a picture of a terrible, but ultimately natural, tragedy unfolding step by step. The core idea is simple: they got lost. After taking that final photo at the Mirador on April 1st, they didn't turn back down the El Pianista trail towards Boquete. Instead, perhaps lured by the view or thinking there was more path, they continued beyond the summit. This area isn't a maintained trail. It plunges steeply down into a treacherous, almost impassable region known locally as the Valley of Silence or the Continental Divide. This terrain is a nightmare. Imagine dense, virgin jungle, crisscrossed by deep ravines, sheer cliffs, and fast-flowing rivers. Visibility drops to almost zero, just a few feet off any vague path. The ground is slippery, unstable mud and rock. Venomous snakes like the deadly fer-de-lance are common. Getting disoriented here is terrifyingly easy. One wrong step, one moment of looking at a view instead of the path, and you're instantly off course in a hostile labyrinth. Proponents of this theory suggest that shortly after leaving the Mirador, one or both girls suffered a serious fall. Maybe Kris slipped on a wet rock near a ravine. Maybe Lisanne lost her footing on a steep incline. A broken leg, a severe head injury, a debilitating sprain. Any significant injury in that environment would be catastrophic. Suddenly, their pleasant hike becomes a desperate fight for survival. This explains the phone calls, 94 desperate attempts to reach help, starting just hours after they vanished. When they realized they were lost or hurt, the lack of signal in that deep valley explains why none connected. The later pin entry on Lisanne's phone on April 6th, maybe she was still alive, though critically injured, conserving battery and trying one last check days later when hope was fading. The night photos? A desperate attempt to see in the pitch black, using the camera flash to momentarily illuminate their surroundings, trying to find a way out, identify landmarks, or even scare off animals drawn by their vulnerability. The photos of leaves, branches, rocks, and the plastic bag, blurry attempts to see anything useful. The photo of Kris's head, perhaps she was lying injured, unable to move, and the flash caught her as Lisanne tried to use the camera. Lisanne's finger over the lens? An accidental slip in the dark or panic while trying to operate the camera. The sheer number of photos? Frantic, fear-driven attempts to create light, signal, or simply understand their hopeless situation. They were alive on April 8th, a week after disappearing, but trapped in a living hell. Their deaths, in this scenario, came from exposure, dehydration, injuries, or perhaps drowning if they fell into a rain-swollen stream. The jungle and the rainy season did the rest. The powerful currents of rivers eventually carried their bodies and belongings downstream. The backpack, protected somehow in a pocket of calm water or vegetation, eventually washed ashore relatively intact, explaining its condition and even the dry cache, perhaps tucked deep inside a waterproof compartment or pouch. The scattering of bones is brutal but natural. Animals, water, and decomposition over weeks in a harsh environment. It's a story of bad luck, a simple wrong turn, and nature's unforgiving power. Theory 2, foul play, darkness by human hand. The other theory rejects the idea of a simple accident. It points to the strange, unsettling details that don't seem to fit the lost in the jungle narrative. It whispers of something sinister. The biggest red flag for many is the backpack, found miles away, downstream, after 10 weeks in the jungle during heavy rains. Yet, it was remarkably intact. The contents weren't pulverized or hopelessly waterlogged. Most chillingly, the $83 cache was completely dry and neatly folded. How? If the river carried it violently for weeks, wouldn't the cache be as soaked? Muddy pulp? Wouldn't the backpack be ripped? Its condition feels too good, too deliberate. Was it placed there? Found and then deposited later? Did someone want it to be found? Then there are the bones. Yes, animals and water scatter remains. But the degree of separation was extreme. Kris's pelvic bone was found, miles away from Lisanne's foot in the boot. Some bones showed unusual characteristics. One of Kris's ribs, reportedly, showed signs of bleaching. Natural bleaching from sun and elements takes time and specific conditions. Could something else have caused it? And why were Kris's shorts never found? If the backpack contained bras, why not shorts? Were they removed deliberately? The night photos take on a darker meaning here. Were the flashes not a signal for help, but a reaction to a threat? Was someone forcing them to take pictures? The photo of Kris's head, does it show her incapacitated not just by injury, but by violence? The strange focus on specific objects like the plastic bag. Could it be evidence staging? The pin entry on April 6th was that someone else accessing the phone, perhaps after the girls were already dead? This theory fuels rumors and speculation. Local criminal activity. Boquete is generally safe. But Panama has areas with drug trafficking and smuggling. Did they stumble upon something they shouldn't have seen? Were they victims of a robbery gone wrong? or an opportunistic attack. Ritualistic elements, the bleached bone, the missing shorts, some point to rumored local rituals or practices, though there's zero concrete evidence for this. The guide, a local guide who knew the girls briefly and was questioned early on, died by suicide months later. Authorities stated it was unrelated, but his death fueled suspicion. Was he involved? Did he know something? His suicide, while explained by personal issues, added another layer of unease. The foul play theory argues that the evidence doesn't add up to a simple accident. The backpack's condition, the bleached bone, the missing shorts, the strange timing of the pin entry, and the unsettling nature of the night photos all point towards human intervention. An attack, an abduction, a cover-up. It suggests the girls met with violence, and the jungle was used to hide the crime. The uncomfortable truth, no answers. Only questions. Here's the problem. Both theories have holes. The accident theory struggles to perfectly explain the backpack's condition and the bleached bone. The foul play theory lacks any direct evidence. No murder weapon. No witnesses. No confessions. No clear motive. The rumors about gangs or rituals remain just that, rumors. Whispers in the dark with no proof. Panama officially closed the case as an accident. But for the families, for many investigators, and for the public following the story, that conclusion feels incomplete. The strange details nag. The lack of a clear, coherent narrative frustrates. Did too adventurous. Intelligent young women simply vanish after one wrong step, leading to days of suffering documented only by desperate phone calls and eerie flashes in the night. Or did human evil find them in that beautiful, remote place, leaving behind a staged scene and scattered remains to confuse and horrify? The evidence whispers possibilities, but it refuses to speak the truth. We are left staring at the fragments, a dry, folded bill, a flashlit photo of matted hair, a bone bleached white, and wondering what terrible story they are trying, and failing, to tell. The jungle holds its secret tight, and the theories, like the night photos, only illuminate fragments, leaving the heart of the darkness untouched. Kris and Lisanne's families begged for answers. Panama closed the case as accidental death. But doubt lingers like a stain. Hikers today find memorials carved into trees. Locals avoid the trail after sunset. And those night photos? They've become a Rorschach test for our deepest fears. Because maybe the truth isn't about snakes or killers. Maybe it's about how thin the line is between us and the wild. How easy it is for light to vanish. We'll likely never know what truly happened to Kris and Lisanne. But their story isn't just a cold case, it's a mirror. It asks us, what would we do lost in the green? Would we fight? Would we hope? Or would the dark swallow us too? If you've ever felt a chill down your spine in the woods, maybe now you know why. Share your thoughts below and hug your loved ones tight. Because some mysteries don't end with answers. They end with silence. Stay curious. Stay safe.